Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final edition of the Australian Association of Street Photographers Speaker Series for 2022. My name is Russell Mason, Vice President of AASPI and host for tonight. And as per usual, I'd like to ask everyone to check that their device or your device is set to mute so we can eliminate the background noise during the presentation. And if you have any questions as we go, please type them into the chat function in the bottom of your screen. And Adrian Weir, our moderator for tonight, will pick them up and pose the questions as we go through the presentation. So tonight's guest speaker, we are delighted to have another Perth-based street shooter, Kerry Faulkner. Kerry is a multi-award-winning freelance journalist whose street photography images have featured in exhibitions in Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, New York, and have also featured a number of international publications, including Street Photography magazine and the International Street Photography and Reportage. Her work is also a part of the WA State Library collection. So I'm looking forward to hearing how Kerry goes about her craft. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you. Kerry, you set to go?
Yeah, I'm set to go. Thanks very much, Russell. And thanks for the opportunity to share my photography. People that know me know that I talk about photography all the time, and people at dinner parties move away from me because their eyes glaze over, when I'm talking about photography. So this is such a treat. So this, as you can see on the screen, this is my Instagram site if you want to go and have a look at some pictures. And I recently had my website sort of revamped to reflect my interest in photography, and you can see the link there to my new website. I want to just start by giving you some context about me, if you like, because the way that I do my photography, I guess, is determined by lots of other factors in my life. So I work as a freelance journalist. I work from home. My main gig, I guess, is really, so I also tutor at the university in journalism, and I earn some income from my pictures. But as I was saying, my main gig, I'm a carer for my daughter Ella, who is age 21, and Ella was born without a major part of her brain. She was born with a major part of her brain missing. So she has a fairly profound disability, I guess you would say. Considering that she's missing a major part of her brain, she's actually quite remarkable and quite capable. But as you can imagine, being a sole carer for someone with a disability can be restrictive in terms of time and travel and all those things, and it's quite frustrating at times not to be able to travel as much as I'd like to. So that's how I operate my life, and I describe my photography as fast and loose, and I probably describe my life as fairly fractured and shambolic, and because living with a person with a disability brings behavioural issues and lots of things, and at times it can be quite tumultuous. So what I've done tonight, I've just selected 3 sets of images, and hopefully we have time to have a look at them all. And I've tried to select things that fit with this theme of life lessons through a lens. They're projects where I've learnt something not just about photography, but also about myself or people in generally, and their lessons that I take forward with me. So what I want to start with is Ali the street barber and the homeless. So I'll show you some pictures. So this is Ali Bouazar, and he is a barber by trade, and pretty regularly he goes out onto the streets and he cuts the hair for people who are homeless and living on the streets. He's an amazing man, and I met Ali through social media. So he has this Twitter account, I think it was, Haircuts for the Homeless, and I saw it one day and it intrigued me. So I made contact with him through social media, and I asked if I could come with him one day when he was going out to do his haircuts. And he kind of put me off a couple of times, and I thought, oh, I don't think it's going to come off. I don't think he's really keen. But in the end, we did catch up, and I think he was just busy. I don't think he was actually putting me off. I think he was just quite busy. He has a new little baby, and he works full time, obviously, and he has quite a busy life. So I went out with him on one Friday, and we met up in the city. And all I had in mind at that stage was taking some photos, and I'll just show you some of the photos. So this is in Perth CBD, and he's when we first started, there was not many people around because it had been raining, but he said to me, "Don't worry, as soon as I do one haircut, everyone will come out." And of course, that's what happened. So he started cutting outside the train station in Perth, and soon lots of people came and gathered around and wanted their hair cut as well. So, but before he started cutting, we sat down and we just had a conversation, and it became apparent that this was an exceptional story, because not only was he doing this amazingly charitable thing of just going onto the streets and giving people haircuts for free, but he himself was came to Australia on a boat. He was a boat person, for want of a better word. And he was escaping persecution in the area where he lived in Iran, and he calls himself a humanitarian refugee. And then he told me this amazing story about himself, about why he does it, and about why he wants to give back to this amazing Australian community that welcomed him with such open arms and has given him, a life that he's really happy with, a life that he's really content with. And so when we started talking, I felt that there was more than just the photos. There was also his story, and I wanted to write that in words. So I just recorded our conversation and proceeded to follow him around for the afternoon as we went through the city. So this couple here, that's the couple. This man here, he's kind of hiding himself behind the dog. So while Ali was cutting his partner's hair, we kind of had a little chat, and he was telling me how happy he was for his partner. He said that life on the street is very difficult for women, and that he was really happy that Ali was taking care of her by giving her a new haircut. And of course, there's nothing like the uplifting effect of having just something as simple as a haircut. It can make you feel like a new person. And so it's really quite a gift that I think that he's giving them. So there's lots of debate around photographing the homeless, and some of it is quite vicious debate. I've been on Facebook groups where the debate has been really nasty about photographers who have gone and photographed the homeless, and they've been condemned for taking advantage of the vulnerable and that sort of thing. So it's always stuck in my mind about whether it is taking advantage of the vulnerable. Is that what we're doing? And it's something that I've been really conscious of not doing, not trying to take advantage of people who are disadvantaged, who are vulnerable. So this project helped me clarify that. So Ali was my conduit. He was my thread into this sort of into this community of homeless people. They loved Ali, so by extension, they loved me. I was okay. I was cool. They just forgot I was there. I was just able to, photograph what I wanted. No one objected. No one got angry with me. They were really happy, and it was really quite a lovely kind of community atmosphere this afternoon. You can see that there's a lot of people sitting around waiting for their haircut. You can also imagine that it's kind of a pretty tough job for a barber, because you can see here, when you're living on the streets, the last thing you kind of take care of really is your hair too much. And you can see here this man's hair, like it was quite amazing. I don't know, he must have had it all tucked up, but when he untucked it, it was really long and it was really dreadlocky and it was really knotty. And here's Ali just really hard at work, just trying to give the man the haircut that he wanted. So a lot of people on this day wanted undercuts, sort of this shaved at the sides and longer, and then longer on top. So he was doing quite a lot of those types of haircuts. And people who were just waiting patiently, and they were, you know, having a drink and having a chat, having a kind of a real social occasion around it. So it was a real pleasure to actually be there and photograph him doing, you know, this wonderful work. And I got the story together and I got the photographs together, and I contacted the Big Issue, because you would have seen in one of the previous pictures, I'll just go back to it, there was a woman there who was selling the Big Issue, and I thought, oh, this is a great series of pictures for the Big Issue. I'll see if they want to run it. So I offered it to them just as a donation. I didn't want to be paid for it. And it took quite some time. They didn't get back to me for ages. And in the meantime, I kind of thought, well, they're not interested. I'll see if the Guardian wants to run it. So the Guardian did run it, and they paid, which was good. And so they ran the story pretty much verbatim as I'd written it, and with a series of photographs. So I went back to see Ali, because I'd said that I would like to just make a bit of a donation out of my fee to his work on the streets. So I went back to visit him, and another photographer had heard about Ali, because I think he must have got some subsequent publicity after the Guardian story on the radio or something about the work he was doing. And another photographer was there on the day that I went back to see Ali on the streets cutting hair. And he had many cameras, and he had a light, and he had a reflector, and he had a big media badge on. And he said, you know, I asked him who he was photographing for, and he said that he liked to enter competitions. And so he thought that Ali cutting the hair of the homeless would be a good image to enter into a competition. So he sat a homeless man on a milk crate outside a window, and he set up his reflector. And I was standing there watching him, and it just occurred to me that now I felt really uncomfortable with that whole situation. I felt now that that vulnerable person was being taken advantage of. I felt that the whole way of doing the photographs, of photographing the homeless, had changed. And it occurred to me that felt really uncomfortable. And so I left. I didn't want to be part of it. So I think, you know, the short story is, it depends on how you approach it. If you approach it with empathy, if you approach it with understanding, if you approach it with sensitivity, then I think photographing the homeless is a really good thing, you know, and a lot of them want to be photographed. They want to be seen. I think if you approach it in a different way, you know, it can be taking advantage of people. So that's the lesson I learned from Ali, the street barber, and photographing the homeless. And yeah, so I'll move on to the next story, or the next theme is, so I'll just talk about this photograph here. I like this photograph because I think it asks the viewer to make a connection beyond the image. So you can see a toe, you can see hair, you can see the end of a barber's cape, if you like, And so the elements of the story there, and then I think the viewer makes the connection outside of the picture frame, and I really like that that idea. So the second one I want to talk about is the beach ball. And the lesson I took from this one is that fun is not a 4-letter word. So the beach ball is this amazing event. Happens every year at City Beach, which is a suburban beach. And in late December, when it's really, really hot and the days are really long, a bunch of people, the word goes out on Facebook, and a bunch of people just gather on the foreshore at City Beach an hour or so before the sun sets, and they have a few nibbles and some drinks and kind of, have a bit of a dance around. And they all go dressed in their finery. So there's people in tuxedos and people in ball gowns and people very, very well dressed in their finery because it's a ball. And so there's lots of interesting characters there. I think there's a lot of people from the arts community, so a lot of performers and that sort of thing. So they're very outgoing, and they're also very welcoming of being photographed. So what happens is that once they've had their socializing on the foreshore, on the grass, they gather on the beach as the sun is about to set. And then what they do is they just simply run into the water full pelt into the ocean. Now, City Beach has waves, it has swell, it has breakers. So it's an interesting thing for people to do. And it makes really good photographs. And for that reason, a lot of people go to photograph it. So as you can see, this man in a bowler hat with his glasses, and he's got an umbrella and he's in the surf. And you can see a whole bunch of other people behind him, people in suits, just running full pelt into the ocean. So it makes really interesting imagery, because where else does that happen? And a lot of people think that the man in the bowler hat picture is a construction, but it's not. This is just simply what the scene was, and it's an unusual scene by any standard. And so women in their lovely long frocks with their hair all nicely done. And so this is the first year I'd been to the beach ball. And so on this occasion, I went with a colleague and we decided that we would dress for the occasion, and that was a mistake. Don't do that. So I chose as my ball dress a long sequined gown, full-length sequin gown. So you can imagine that when you get a full-length sequin gown wet in the ocean, it gets really heavy. Aside from the fact that when you're trying to swim in surf in a full-length gown, it's really quite difficult. So to be able to be in the surf and be in the ocean and get these images the way that I was dressed, I think is kind of an achievement in itself. Without drowning is an achievement in itself. The fact that some of them turned out quite well, I think, is a bonus. So the thing that also allowed me to capture these photos is the fact that recently I added a Leica XU to my cameras. I normally shoot with a Fuji X-T3, but the Leica XU is a quirky waterproof camera, so it allows me to go under the water with the camera. And it took me a while to get my head around taking this beautiful little Leica that looks just like a regular SLR into the water. It took me a while to get over that thing, but once I did, it was amazing, because it allows me to do street photography in the water, if that makes sense. And so I was able to go in there fearlessly and be out full on in the surf, my camera full on, and be able to capture these pictures. So I'm really glad that I added that little camera to my collection. And I look forward to using it more in the summer, because I feel like I'm only just kind of mastering it, if you like. So the XU also allowed me to take full advantage of the shooting that I do around the jetty. So this is the other Coogee jetty, which is one of my favorite places to go. I hang out at this jetty a lot. And I hang out at this jetty a lot because in summer, it gets really, really busy. It gets really packed. And it's kind of in this area that draws people from a really wide cross section of the community. So there's lots of Indigenous people, there's lots of Islander Indigenous, New Zealander Indigenous who come down here to play, because the jetty's wonderfully high and you can jump off it, and it's kind of really thrilling. I love photographing here. I love the people, and I love the fact that I've run into problems once here photographing here. When I was in the water, I'd been there for quite some time, and I could see a couple looking at me, and they didn't say anything to me, but I knew they were troubled. And the next thing I know, I have the lifeguard coming and leaning over this huge jetty at me down in the water, looking up at them. And the lifeguard said, "Oh, I've just had a complaint that you're making that a couple who have just seen me uncomfortable by taking videos." And I just said, "I'm not taking videos. I'm just taking stills." And off the lifeguard went. And I kind of carried on for a while. But when things like that happen, kind of takes a bit of the wind out of my sails. I kind of start to wind it down, I think, because I feel like I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. But usually I walk up to the jetty, I put my backpack down, take my camera out. If it's really packed, I'll just say to people, just generally, "Hey guys, are you okay if I take some pictures?" And they'll say yes, and then they'll all pose for me, you know, in their strongman poses, and groups of guys and groups of girls. And then so I take that picture, and then they forget that I'm there, and then I can take the pictures that I want to take. Like this one. I love this picture, and I'm so surprised this is shot with a 14mm lens, which is I use on most of my, which I use for shooting mostly now. And I'm surprised I got this close without it being blurred. So I'm quite surprised at the detail in it with the water droplets. I love, there are things I love to photograph. I love to photograph things with energy and passion. And movement is part of that energy. I like this picture because the boy's head is blurred, his knees are in focus. It's showing that movement. He's throwing his head back as he does this backflip off the jetty. When I photograph, I'm not technically perfect. My compositions are, you know, sometimes quite erratic. I like to use blur. And I remember back to a series that Trent Park did at the Bathurst series. It was back in 1999, and it sticks in my mind still. And it was of the crowd at the Bathurst races. Young men in their cars doing wild, crazy things like riding on the roof of the car and, you know, hanging out windows and just doing crazy, crazy stuff. And a lot of his images are blurred. A lot of those images were, you know, not perfectly composed, if you're thinking about, you know, the rule of thirds and that kind of thing. I like to know the rules, and then I like to break them a bit and see how that works. And so, yeah, so there's lots of energy. I love photographing the dancing for that reason as well, because there's lots of energy. This took a lot of dog paddling. It's a good thing I'm a good swimmer, because I hang out in the water now with that XU quite a lot. And I'm looking forward to doing it again this summer. So this is an example of perhaps breaking the rules. I mean, this is you know, clearly flawed because of the sunspots, but I kind of like it. A lot of people like it too for that reason. I think it's the positioning of that sunspot where his head was supposed to be. So I'm in the water, fair way down below these guys, and these guys were amazing. They were just taking running leaps over the balcony and into the water, and it was just a matter of trying to capture when they were going to be flying, which is not altogether an easy thing to do. So so I'm just going to share with you a little something about how I time this. So when I'm in the water underneath the jetty, where this boy has leapt from, so the way that I judge when to start photographing is that I look at the spectators who are positioned at the end of the jetty, and they're often looking up at the boys about to jump into the water. And when I see them tracking downward, I know that someone's leapt off the jetty and is about to come into my line of sight, and that I can start photographing. So it's kind of getting used to this place and figuring it out, and figuring out kind of the ebb and flow and what happens there. And I think this is kind of improves my photography to some extent. Going back and going back and going back to the same spot, different people, the time of day is usually the same. It's really quite shadowy. There's very strong shadows. Once again, it's not really something that you do as a photographer. You avoid times of day where there's strong shadows. But I think the strong shadows work in that series. So the last one that I want to talk to you about is the square dancing series, which I really love. So to get ready for this presentation, I revisited these images, and it's actually kind of I found it really, really troubling, because it brought back a lot of the angst I felt about this project. So when I do yoga at a little hall down the road from me on a Thursday evening, when the yogis are going out, these groups of people wandering in, and they're dressed in they're older people, you know, in their 70s and 80s and 90s even, and they're dressed in these really pretty frocks and really smart suits, and they file in as we were filing out. And I figured out that they were the square dancers in this hall in White Gum Valley. And I asked one evening if the next week I could stay and take some photographs. So I did, and you can see the results here. I went back twice, I think it was. So the lesson I learned from this is, so for this, I asked along a colleague if she would like to come and photograph with me. So that was a mistake. So obviously in some of the images, you can see another photographer. But the real difficulty with it was that I lost the project. So I went and shot it twice, I think. And I got these beautiful images. I think what I love about them is I love that they're vulnerable, that they're old. I love the energy of it as well. I love the energy of their dancing and their camaraderie. I love the textures of this old hall with its scratched wooden floors and its fake wood paneling and its plastic chairs. You know, I love the gentleness of these people. And so, as I explained, so I went back a couple of times to photograph it. And then my life, as I said, is quite shambolic, is quite all over the place. You know, depends on when carers are available and that sort of thing. But the colleague that I invited along to this shoot was really taken with it. So she's an amateur photographer, and she was really taken with it. And perhaps she'd not experienced anything like it before, or I'm not really quite sure. But the colleague that he asked along went to every event and photographed it, and kind of became the square dancing photographer, if you like. And I lost control of that project to her. So some of her photographs were excellent, and she entered them in competitions, and they did quite well. So, but it was heartbreaking for me, because it had been a project that I'd initiated, and it was something that I wanted to pursue, but I lost control of it. And I had to look at myself really deeply and say, what is it about this that makes you so uncomfortable? Is it the fact that, you know, someone else has shot the same project and has been really successful? Is it jealousy? And I decided it wasn't that at all, because I'm usually really supportive of colleagues who do well. I always congratulate them, and I'm really happy for them. So it wasn't that. It was the fact that I didn't stand up for the project and say, hey, you know, this was my creative idea, and I'd like to be able to pursue it or figure out what I want to do with it before anything else. And so I regret not doing that until it was too late. And at that point, the colleague said, well, would you like to write some words for my book that I'm photographing for the square dancers? And I said, no, thanks. I don't really want to do that. And it had become clear to me that the project was no longer mine. I'd lost it. And so it then also became an uncomfortable question about, well, do I raise the way I'm feeling about this with my friend and colleague and say, you know, I don't think you did the right thing. I think you should have checked in with me. I initiated the project. I kind of started it off. And I got advice from various people. And in the end, I did say, look, I think you need to look at the ethics of taking over someone's project, and maybe talk to your mentors about that and see what they advise you. And of course, it ended the friendship. And so I lost the project and I lost the friendship. And that seems like a good place to finish my talk, I guess. So I hope that all made sense to you. And, you know, if you have any questions, please do ask, because I'm more than happy to answer them. And I hope that you've taken something from it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kerry. That was really good. Question for you. All these projects are what you do in your personal time. They're not related to your freelance photojournalistic work?
So projects like the Alley, the Street Barber, you know, that's part of my journalistic work. So a lot of my writing work is what I call bread and butter work. So it's not projects that I choose to do myself. It's projects that I'm commissioned to write. And most of them don't include the photography. So, so when I get an opportunity to do projects that are my own, like the Alley, the Street Barber projects, that's when I can, you know, do whatever I like. I can do the photography, I can do the writing, I can do everything.
Excellent. And we just got a comment here from Sally Coggle saying that she loves your passion for your work and it comes through in all your projects, and beautiful work.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Sally. I appreciate that. I'm a fan of your work too.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions for Kerry, please type them into the chat. And Sally says thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad that passion comes through, because it is something that I am passionate about. And yeah, and I hope to be able to do, you know, more better projects, although don't we all? Yeah.
Okay.
And how long you been?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask a question while we're waiting for people to type in questions.
Yeah.
This last frame here, now I look at that and I think, Well, I love the photo. It's fantastic. But I'm sitting there thinking, you must be. I feel that you're at an advantage being a female to be able to take a photo like that.
Yeah.
There's reasons. I mean, is that what you're feeling when you get into these spaces, and even down the beach? I mean, there can be some problematic issues. A guy running around with a camera versus a woman. So, as a street photographer,
Oh,
what's your thoughts on
definitely. This is where women have a definite advantage. Even so, when I'm on the jetty, I do photograph the girls, but I'm a bit more wary. The girls are much more body conscious. The boys, they're kind of in show off mode. You know, they're happy to be photographed. Sometimes the girls are a bit more body conscious because they're in their bathers and they're feeling exposed. And I try and stay attuned to that, if you like. So consequently, a lot of my pictures are of the boys. But no, definitely. So the thing to keep in mind with the square dancers is that their knickers are meant to be seen, if you like. They have like super pretty knickers that so when their dresses do flare up, that they've got these, you know, special pants on. But a guy couldn't take that photo, you know, I don't think. And so it is a distinct advantage in a lot of the settings that I photograph in to be a woman. And even so, I run into problems of people, you know, thinking that I'm people saying that I'm making them feel uncomfortable. So yeah, and it does make me feel awful because I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. I feel horrible if someone says that to me. So I just kind of pack up my bag and go. Yeah, so yeah, we've all had that, I'm sure. I mean, I nearly got arrested.
Tell us that story. Come on.
Oh, yeah. So I was just with a group of photographers in Perth, and it was in the evening, and Northbridge is really busy, lots happening, people drunk, blah blah. You know, it's kind of fertile ground for street photography, and there was a fight on a street corner. Okay, you know, it must have been 100 people standing around with their phones photographing this fight on the street corner. You know, police were coming, blah 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 blah, and I was there amongst the crowd. I didn't have a phone camera. I had my camera because I was out taking photographs, and the police officer just narrowed in on me and said I couldn't take photos. So I tried to explain to him, because I do tutor in media ethics at Curtin University. I did try to explain, and media law, and I did explain to him, no, that I was in fact, it was legal for me to take photos. I was in a public place and it was legal for me to take the photos. His argument was that he was bound to protect the privacy of a person under arrest. So the person hadn't been arrested yet, one. Secondly, they may be taught that in policing school, in the policing academy, that they have to protect the identity of the person under arrest. That doesn't override the law. The law says that if I'm in a public place, I can take a photograph. And so we went back and forward, you know, 2 or 3 times. And a friend that was standing beside me said, look, you're going to get arrested if you don't walk away. So I took that and I stopped arguing. I'd long ago stopped taking photographs, and I walked away, and he came after me. And he grabbed me and he pushed me backwards through traffic across the street, and he made me stand on the street corner and, you know, away from everyone else. And there I stood, and I was really frightened. I was shocked. I don't know if you've ever been grabbed by a police officer, but it just really didn't compute with me. And yeah, and I was embarrassed as well. So I naturally made a complaint to the police, and it was investigated, and they secured all the CCTV footage, and it verified exactly my account of events. But you know what? He just got a slap on the wrist, and he got retraining or something, you know. They didn't really care. I was you know, just a journalist that he pushed around, and, you know, they didn't really care. But, you know, at least he was found to be in the wrong, and I was really pleased that all the evidence supported what I told them. Yeah. So that was pretty scary.
Yeah, I imagine so. Haven't had anything like that myself, and let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions here. One from Sally, and I was actually going to ask the exact same question that Sally's just asked here is, do you always work in black and white on your personal projects?
Do you know, I've moved more toward black and white, and that's predominantly what I do now, unless the picture needs to be in color, in which case I will do it in color, but I prefer black and white. There's just something about it that takes away the distraction of color, and there's something more powerful about it. I think, anyway. I think there's something more powerful about it, particularly when you get strong movements, strong actions. You know, I shot a protest the other day with a group of men doing a Black Power salute, and their shirts were Indigenous art and very colourful. And I thought, oh, maybe this needs to be in colour, but I think even in black and white, it's more powerful, because I guess instead of looking at the beautiful colours in the Indigenous painting on their shirts, I'm looking at that Black Power salute, that really strong action that they're doing, and it's more powerful. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. And Angela, she first says, thank you for sharing your photos and the stories behind these photos. And then she asks, what key lessons did you learn from these 3 projects?
Oh, so the key lessons were from the beach ball, that fun is not a 4-letter word, and I should have given you some context around that. So I came out of a marriage not so long, well, it's actually 4 years now, but it seems like a long time ago. And there was not much fun in that marriage. It was a pretty horrible experience toward the end, and fun was a 4-letter word when I was married. So it's taken me some relearning to understand that it's okay to relax and have fun, and that doing something silly like the beach ball, which is purely just for the silliness of it, that's okay. It's okay to be silly. I think from the street barber, I learned that photographing the homeless is not taking advantage of them unless you set out to take advantage of them. So it's in your approach, I guess. With the square dancing, the lesson I learned is that I need to be better at standing up for myself, and knowing that I have good ideas and they're worth holding on to. Also, that I learned that I used to think that everyone had good creative ideas, but I've learned that not everyone does. Some people just follow what other people do. Some people don't have original ideas. Some people don't see, like, so I could see that this square dancing had potential as a photographic opportunity. Not everyone can see that. So I kind of learned to appreciate that as something pretty special, when you have that creativity where you can look at something and go, you know what, I think that's got potential to be a really good story, a really good visual story.
Excellent. Thank you. And Angela has just followed up saying, Kerry, I feel like your photos capture a lot of your own life experiences and values. And is that a fair insight?
Oh, I'm so glad you say that, because that is so true. That's why I wanted to explain a little bit about my life, so that you could see how my photographs kind of tell that story. So very much I did photography when I was at university 100 years ago, and then my writing took off before my photography, and I became a journalist. And journalists in those days, when we did stories, we used a photographer from a pool of photographers, and we didn't take our own photographs. They didn't want us to, because they were protective of their jobs and their skills. They wanted to keep the pool of photographers working. And you can see why, because now it's eventuated that the pool of photographers in newsrooms was the first to go with the, with the cutting edge budgets and the digitalization of imagery. So now when I teach journalists to be journalists, I say you need to be able to take photos, you need to be able to write, you need to be able to do video, you need to have as many skills to make you as valuable as possible to an employer. Whereas when I was working in the newsroom, I wasn't really encouraged to take photographs. So it went on the back burner. I got married, I had a child with a profound disability, became, a carer, and coming out of that really unhappy marriage was the realization that my creativity wasn't being fed, and photography was where that lay. And I picked up the camera. Again, I rediscovered it. I rediscovered this amazing genre of street photography, and off I went. And so it's very intrinsic to my photography, is an intrinsic part of my life journey. And I learned something about people. I learned something about, I love these places that I go to. I love the jetty. I love going to the speedway and the drags, and people are showing off their cars, and I love it because people are friendly and welcoming, and they want to share their passion, and I'm interested, and so it's perfect. So yeah, so it's very much tied to who I am. And sometimes, if I didn't have that experience of being a carer of someone with a profound disability, I don't think I could maybe have the empathy that I have and understand situations and people as well as I do, if that makes sense.
Excellent. Thanks, Kerry. So I'll hand it back to Russ now. That's
Thanks.
it.
Thanks, Adrian. And as per usual, I'm sitting here thinking, I do have a few more questions for you, but I'm not going to hold you to this one, Kerry, but you sound like you knew a little bit about the law behind street photography in Western Australia. I was just wondering if we're Australia-wide collective. I was just wondering if state laws come into play with that, or is there a blanket kind of federal oversight with the laws?
Not as far as I'm aware. I'd have to look at the individual laws, but photography in a public place is not. There's no restriction on photography in a public place, as far as I'm aware. No, if you're in the public, you can take a picture. Even the police officer didn't know that law, which kind of strikes me as being quite a gap in their learning if they don't know that that's what the law is. They should know that. That's pretty basic.
I would have thought you can't have a law like that because, while we do street photography, a law against photography in a public place is a law against photojournalism.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, his excuse was he was protecting the privacy of the person under arrest. Well, the person wasn't under arrest, and that's not a law. That may be something he's taught as a ethical thing to do. That's why when people appear in court, they're often taken out through the back door and put in the rather than going out through the front door and facing all the photographers that are there waiting for that person to come out of court. But yeah, it doesn't override that it's legal to take a picture in a public place.
So
Yeah.
Another comment just put up from Ken here on it. It says there's no law against, but you can be arrested for being a nuisance. So again, the police can make
They
their own assessment.
Absolutely, and they could have. He could have easily said, "You're in my way. You're hindering police." I think is what I would have probably been charged with.
Uh, and if people look in the chats, Stephen Walters has actually put up a link to street photography and the law,
Yeah.
URL link to it. So that's available to everyone if they want to grab that in the chat.
That's a great resource. I've read that. So it's a great resource to have just to feel assured that you're okay. But, you know, when you're arguing with a police officer, he's going to win. He's going to win. But anyway, I gave him a run for his money.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Just on a final note, we've had a few Perth-based photographers, Rebecca Wilshire and Christian Close. Did you catch up with those guys, or maybe you can describe what you think about the street photography scene over in Perth?
So I think the street photography scene in Perth is quite a healthy one. I'm not part of it. I don't go to sort of meetups, so I guess it's been a learning thing for me. So particularly around the square dancing thing, where I went with a colleague, and often I would go and shoot with a colleague. I've been out to shoot with those groups in the past, but to me it becomes a social occasion, and I can't concentrate on the photography and the social. I'm not a particularly social person. I'm probably more, in terms of personality, I'm more introverted than extroverted. So being social takes energy. It takes thoughtfulness, concentration, and I can't concentrate on photography and being social at the same time. So I often would not come back with a good photo, or probably had a good time, but didn't have any photos to show for it. And I think I do much better on my own. I rather go out on my own and I don't want to go. The beach ball is difficult for me because there's lots of photographers there, and I don't like to be competing with lots of other photographers for a picture. I want to have the whole scene to myself. So, you know, if I shoot with a group of photographers, and that's not going to happen. But I think the street scene here is really healthy. But I'm not part of the clique. I don't do international workshops. You know, I don't, because, you know, I don't have a lot of opportunity for travel, unfortunately. Hopefully that will change soon. But yeah, I don't go to those workshops that a lot of people go to, and yeah, so a bit on the outside of that group, I would say.
Okay. I think that's just about it. No, Ken's put something in the feed here. I'm on the streets 2-3 times a week, and I don't see other shooters, so he's alone shooting himself. I think a lot of people like that. I think that street photography is not really a team sport, but yeah, I'm
it's really interesting that you say that.
Yeah, well, I think it's great for a catch up though. But yeah, I bump into people all the time. We're kind of like solo people just weaving our way around the streets.
Yeah, and is that for the same reason that you feel that you don't get a good result if you go with a group of people?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I think similar to you, Kerry. Once I go with people, it becomes more social. I tend to prefer shooting on my own. I mean, I feel that's where I get my better work. And then I like going out with people, but it becomes very much more social catch up than actually a serious shoot.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And, you know, sometimes the temptation has been to say, oh, do you want to come and shoot this? And then I go, no, don't do that. Stop. Just go and do it on your own. So, yeah, works well for me.
Very good. Oh, well.
I've lost you there, Russell. Have you changed something? I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you still.
I think Russell is freezing up at the moment. He's got a connection problem.
Oh, right.
But everything else.
All righty.
Yeah, I think you're having. I think you're frozen there, Russell. So I don't know who else here. So look, I suppose unless we get Russell back, I'll step in for him here, and I'll thank everybody for their attendance tonight, and very much thank Kerry for wonderful presentation and some interesting insights around street photography. So thank you very much, and Russell's back there, so I'll give it back to Russell.
Thanks, Adrian.
Or is he back, or is it?
No, I can't hear Russell.
No, I think he's still.
Yeah,
Still buffering.
dear me.
Yep. So thank you everybody for I hope you enjoyed the speaker series over 2023, 2022, sorry, I'm thinking ahead, and it should be back next year in 2023. Hopefully we have many more great speakers like we've had this year. The AGM, are you right now, Russell? Is your connection there?
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, yeah, I'd just like to thank Kerry for tonight. Thanks for that, Adrian. And who would have thought that I'd learn about frilly knickers too? But on behalf of the members of AASPI, yeah, we'd like to thank you for your time and absolutely fantastic presentation. And yeah, you've mentioned your Instagram feed, Kerry Faulk, and your website, kerryfaulkner.com. So if you want to check out more of Kerry's stuff, please hit those sites. And yeah, as Adrian was just saying, we have our AGM next Tuesday on the 15th of November at 8 p.m. And you should have had an email about that. There will be another email sent out with the login details. So I'll look at your inbox for that. And please consider if you'd like to join the committee, or if you'd like to take up any vacant position, or even if you'd like to volunteer some time if you have a skill set that you think AASPI could benefit by. And yeah, as we conduct all of our committee meetings online now, the invitation is open, and you should be able to do that from everywhere in Australia. So feel free to raise your hand. The newsletter, there should be a newsletter hitting your inbox in the very near future. So keep your eye on for that. And also, we're looking for content for next newsletter. So if you have something interesting or happening in your city, or if you've got some news to share, exhibiting somewhere, or you've been a recipient of the award or whatever, if you want to blow your own trumpet, yeah, please give us a hoy, and we put that in the next edition. Adrian, I'd like to thank you very much for the last 2 years and your work getting these speaker series sessions set up. Yeah, it's been a huge effort in the past few years, and if it wasn't for your work, it wouldn't have been half as successful as they have been. So I'd really like to thank you for that. And well, yeah, as this is last for the year, so I hope you enjoyed them. Speaking of Adrian, you might know him by Ad Tamo. He's just released a book. Adrian, is there still some books out there that you can sell to some people if they want to go and check?
I've actually sold out of them at this stage, but believe it or not, but I might take orders for a third run, because I'm currently working with The Age on potentially an article on the book.
All righty, so there you go. Congratulations on the book, and you can read about that in the newsletter when it comes out. So that's all for tonight, and hope you've enjoyed it. And thank you again for joining us. I hope to see you out on the street. So stay safe and good night.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks all.
Stick around, Kerry. I just want to have a chat.